Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a New Pace podcast. I'm your host, Lesley Andrew, and today we have Amanda Pipe from Here Comes the Sun Counselling here to talk to me about what she does and how it fits in, where it contributes to sort of the topics of well-being and stepping into a new pace. So, as ever, a warm welcome to you, Amanda. Hello.
Oh, nice to see you. Hello, everybody.
Good to see you too. And of course, we say see because some people will be watching this as a video on YouTube or wherever the clip might be seen, and other people it might be just the audio. So nice to be talking to you today. Initially, how would you like to sort of introduce yourself to people? What is it that you do, and how do you help people?
So, I help people in many different ways. So, I have worked with children for going on 30 years, but I've worked both in and out of schools. But I have now got my own private practice where I work as a therapist, person-centered. I'm sort of going between those two things. I'm still working with children because that's a passion, but I'm also doing my other passion, which is counselling.
Yeah. And that sounds like because you've been doing it for such a long time, there's maybe so many things that might be like really just natural to you that you might forget that you're using those particular skills. And you mentioned person-centered counselling, and as an art therapist myself, that's one of the things that I would be considering as well and thinking about and using, really that therapeutic relationship, like really being aware of that rapport. So what would you say that means for you?
Well, person-centered counselling, rapport, connection, all of these things, that they really mean the same thing. It's about centering it around the person that you're working with, and that's something I do when I work with children as well. I spend a lot of time doing craft stuff, because it's amazing the conversations you can have with children, with anybody when you're crafting. So I love that creative element of it. In the counselling room, I think it's about getting to know new people, understanding their point of view, walking beside them. I always say, this is about you, this is about what's important to you, and I'm just here to walk by the side of you and maybe help you see things from a new perspective. So for me, it's all about the person who is sat in front of me in the space.
Yeah. And how they show up on the day, what they choose to do, whether it's doing something creative, whether it's talking about something that maybe happened that day, or whether it's exploring something quite meaningful. Yeah.
I mean, I think that what some people, certainly in my practice, something that I've realised is that one size doesn't fit all, and so you've got to be adaptable to what that person needs specifically. Maybe they struggle with silence, maybe they need background noise. So I have in the past, integrated music, in the background just to help that. Drawing if people struggle with eye contact, what I mean, or just something that helps them to feel comfortable in the space that they're in, because we can't express ourselves as well, or trust as easily if we don't feel comfortable in the space that we're in.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with you that feeling safe is so important, isn't it? That actually it doesn't matter how much experience the counsellor or the therapist or the coach or whoever it is has, if you don't feel safe with them or in the space, then it can be counterproductive, really, can't it? You might be like really genuinely wanting to help somebody and genuinely like offering and listening to them, but actually there might be something else, like something maybe with the room or something with the weather or something that's maybe affecting that person on the day that just maybe means that they aren't able to be able to access it in the same way. But I would still maybe think that this, if they're coming, they're still getting something out of it, really.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, people that I've spoken to, they think that you talk about deep and dark and meaningful things throughout every single session, and
Yeah,
that's not the case. Sometimes, you can just have a very surface level conversation about an argument you had with some fella down the shop, or do you know what I mean? Something that's really bothered them. It's not always big, massive problems. Sometimes it's just kind of, as I said before, learning to see things from a different perspective, and getting to know who you are, because so many people, spend so much of their life masking somebody that they think somebody else wants them to be. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I suppose this is what my space is. It's an opportunity for them to come into the space and be who they need to be in that
yeah,
space and feel heard.
yeah, yeah. And that idea of sometimes you might be talking about kind of the walk to the shop or the weather. Or I was thinking, when you said that, I was thinking, like, for me, it would be telling somebody about the paint stain that I've got on the carpet that I've been relentlessly trying to get rid of, compared to talking about sort of some of the challenges, some of the emotional challenges for me, or some of the sort of past things, that it would be this, and maybe there's maybe something about like your clients feeling heard and feeling seen and understood, that in that moment that matters.
Exactly. I mean, I would say that I spent a good 90% of the time in sessions not speaking,
Yeah,
because I am just listening and listening to what they need to say, because that's what it's about. It's about that client that comes into the room, and them being able to project what they need to project. You know what I mean? And I think that another key part of it, and this is something that I feel really strongly about, is that I'm authentic when I'm in this room, and I I try to be authentic all the time. I mean, you can't see it at the moment, but I normally have bright purple hair, as you know,
yeah,
and and because that's who I am. That's that is I'm bringing it in the jumper instead. That it kind of embodies how I feel about myself. I'm a colourful character. I'm somebody that is like, this is me. And that's because of the work that I've done over the years to get to a point where I'm okay to be like that.
yeah. And I mean about, like showing up as you are, like the quirkiness, the intricacies, I can't say, intricacies or something. Doing that,
Intricacies.
doing
You're
that.
close.
What was the word?
Intricacies.
Yeah, that one, that one. So, those little things that make you you, rather than putting on like a professional kind of persona. And like, because yeah, I remember working with somebody who just described me as quirky, and I would say that, and it didn't mean that I wasn't being professional. He had commented on I was wearing hats all the time, different hats. So actually, yeah, so that was important. But then equally, being able to be just show up and do the job's important. It sounds like people are maybe seeing you with the purple hair, and kind of actually you're expressing a part of you like externally that they can then witness, so that they can see that as well.
That's it, and it's always a really sort of satisfying moment, I suppose, for me when I'm able to witness somebody start to show their authentic self to me. That is just a lovely, lovely moment, because that lets me know that they feel safe and comfortable
Yeah,
in my space.
yeah,
And that's just a lovely moment, and that I love it. I love it.
yeah. And sometimes I'd imagine that sometimes that can be quite subtle.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
other times it might be really obvious that you could see them, and like for instance if you turned up with like purple hair, like your example, or maybe somebody actually saying, like really clearly saying, like a like or a dislike of what's going on in the session. That to me, I think those kind of things are really powerful, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And important, that those little moments when, when noticed, even if it's not commented on, there's for some people they are the big moments.
Yeah, 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 of course. So I'm curious, really, and I suppose just thinking this is like been a pathway for you for a while, but I'm just really curious about what, if there were anything in particular that sort of inspired you to go down this pathway, down this field professionally, or any sort of thing that just really sparked curiosity with it.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a counsellor for a long time. So like I've got four, I call them kids, but they're not. I mean, my three of them are in their 20s now, and one's a teenager. But um, after I had my three oldest, I went through a really difficult time. I suffered with really bad anxiety, health anxiety. I struggled with postnatal depression. I was in a really bad way, and I struggled with it for about 3 years, and I did it completely alone. I didn't tell anybody, and the reason was because I was ashamed and I was afraid of what people would say, and I was afraid that people would judge me for it. And so um, it was only when I was on the cusp of a complete breakdown, and I went to the doctors, and thankfully I had an amazing doctor and got me the help. I went through CBT, and I went on medication. And the biggest thing for me, and I think this is why it resonates with me so strongly now, is is the not feeling alone,
Yeah.
not feeling like I was the only person that had ever felt like this before, that I was going crazy. That's what I thought. Um, and that really changed things for me. But obviously, I still had, three, and then another one to come, kids, and so I went along the path which I still love, working with kids, because it all worked together.
Mm.
But what really pushed me along that path in the end, although I was inching along it, but what really pushed me was when I lost my mum, and then 2 years later, the day before the first COVID lockdown, lost my dad, both to cancer.
Goodness.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
after my mum died, I just didn't grieve. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was just like a bull in the china shop, just like, right, I need to get this done and this done. And I was working 60-hour days. I had my own cleaning business at that point as well. I was totally burning myself out.
Mm.
And about 18 months later, I pulled a muscle in my back. Well, I had slipped discs in my back, but pulled a muscle and was laid up for 3 weeks. And it was just like grief hit me like a train. Um, so I was only just starting to deal with it, and then 6 months later, my dad found out he had cancer, and 3 weeks later he died. And then we went
Mm.
into COVID, and so it was just, oh, it just broke me. It just broke my world apart. I was utterly devastated and ended up really depressed, and I just really struggled. And it was only as I started to deal with these multiple deaths and this massive loss in my life that I realised again I'd gone into that place of feeling very alone. And as I worked through it, I mean, we're talking, 5 years since Dad died. Um, I realised that I just couldn't sit with that I couldn't bear to think that other people felt the way that I did. And so that's what pushed me. It started as a way of helping to heal myself, and it ended it hasn't ended, but it pushed me to end up going along this path of helping others. And bereavement is a passion of mine, but I love all types of counselling. But yeah, bereavement is definitely something close to my heart.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just really mindful that you've shared such a lot in just a few words. Just, thinking about like your own mental health, depression, anxiety, and like postnatal depression, like experiences, as well as like huge losses, like so close together. And actually, it's so easy to like from a cognitive point of view, name those things. And especially like, talking in the podcast, like we're probably talking as peers, like professionally, it's so easy to name those things. But then I just want to just pause for a minute and just acknowledge that and just feel it. And I can not actually know how you were feeling, but I can feel something now, and even just through the screen, I can feel just the intensity of that. So actually, and I'm just mindful as well that sometimes people might be listening just anywhere, like you might be walking down the street or you might be driving, and some of these things might be come out of the blue when we're having these conversations. So thank you for being able to sort of hold space for Amanda as well, like virtually, but just look after yourself too. So with this in mind, you said something about like really pushing through and working those 60-hour weeks, and maybe like feeling that was necessary at the time, and that maybe that it was hard to slow down. That's like maybe like what do you imagine would have been like to have not done that?
I tried really hard not to do that the second time because I knew what had happened the first time. But I just realised that was my brain was trying to protect me from this massive pain. And looking back now, I'm not sure. I suppose part of it for me was that because of everything I'd been through before, I felt like I was treated like almost wrapped in bubble wrap by people. Oh, we don't want to say that just in case they feel this way. You know what I mean? And so I almost went out of my way to prove that wasn't how it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I can even imagine what that would have been like because I was just so numb.
Yeah.
But I think that I suppose if I'm thinking about it, if I'd have let all that in, I think it would have overwhelmed me. I would
Yeah.
have been overwhelmed by it. But I think that I maybe wouldn't have struggled for as long as I did if I'd have allowed myself to be overwhelmed at the beginning rather than live with it for so long before that overwhelming came.
It's interesting, isn't it, because I do the same thing. I look back and think, oh, maybe that wasn't helpful, or maybe I could have done something differently. But actually, and like I'd mentioned when I sort of asked you more about it, it does really feel like it was necessary at the time. And actually, there's so many people that work really, really hard, like when they're going through some challenges, or they just really push through, or they really focus on getting on with life rather than focusing on the sort of the feelings part. And actually, that the bit in the middle can be really hard. That balance in the middle, like, can be really hard to find that balance, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, because my mum had been ill for quite some time, so we'd known it was coming, and I'd pretty much convinced myself that I had done all the grieving that I needed to do and that I'd completed grief. I was like, no, I'm fine. Everyone else is
Yeah.
like, oh, she's going to fall apart. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. But I just realised that I just built this protective cocoon around myself just to stave off that pain. And it didn't. It didn't, I mean, but sometimes, everybody's different and everybody processes things in a different way. And, sometimes people need that time. People need that time to protect themselves. And then I'm a great believer that your brain allows you to feel it when you are ready.
Yeah.
And I was just ready.
Yeah, because sometimes things come up out of the blue, wouldn't they? Like certain things would trigger or a reminder, a memory or a cue or something out of the blue that might cause then emotional reaction, and actually, on the back of like your brain allowing that to happen, in some ways it feels a little bit like, well, how can the brain allow me to suddenly be triggered? But like with this model of actually the brain is protecting us, it allow these things to happen when you're ready to build that resilience and to build that. But then at the time, I'd imagine that it might not feel like that.
No, definitely not. And yeah, I mean, I believe that what happened was I had all those emotions that I would have had right at the start, but I just had them a year and a half later. And I think
Yeah,
the hardest part for me was that when it happened for me, everyone else had moved on. Not, close people, but, you know, everyone else in the sort of outer ring of people had kind of moved on, and so I didn't feel like I could talk about it to other people because they were like, well, she died a year and a half ago. What, why are you only just starting? Because I'd put up this front for such a long time, and I don't think I realised that I was putting on a front, but that's absolutely what I was doing. That was the
yeah.
hardest bit.
But like a lot of the sort of models of grief imply that there's a system, that there's a route that you follow, that you do these stages. But actually, like there isn't this stage like you said you completed grief. It made me think about like a game, like a computer game or something, when you're going through all these levels and then you're like ping ping, we're up to this ping, and then completed. And it's not like that at all. Like,
I get really frustrated actually by the stages of grief, and I think the reason that I do is because I firmly believed that that was what was going to happen. I would go through each one of these stages in order, like it says you do, and I would get to the end, acceptance, and that would be it.
right, yeah,
My experience has been so different from that. I have pinged backwards and forwards like a pinball machine through
yeah,
each of these stages, and that's why really the dual process model, where it's basically, as you know, it's going between these, being okay and then not being okay, works for me. Doesn't work for everybody, and as I say, everybody grieves different. I suppose the thing that really frustrates me is the societal view of grief, and that
okay,
that
yeah,
is that you grieve for so long and then you get over it. You know what I
right, yeah,
mean? Until you've really been through it, you don't realize that that's generally not the case. I mean, I suppose I describe it as it's like having a stone in your pocket forever. It's always there. And, some days it's heavier than others, but you don't get used to having it there. No, you don't get over having it there. You just get used to carrying it.
yeah,
It's that simple.
yeah. And then imagine sometimes that you might be living your life and then you put your hand in your pocket and you go, oh, that stone's still there.
Yeah.
And you're, oh, and then you like carry on. Or other times you put your hand in your pocket and then, oh, that stone's still there. Oh, now I need to pause, need to stop, I need to do something for me, need
Yeah.
to work with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And some days can be so hard, even now, I'm at a point now where I can have weeks, months where I feel absolutely fine, and then there'll just be something, a song on the radio, a smell, a sound, you know what I mean? And it feels raw, as if it's just happened again. And all right, it doesn't last as long, but it still hurts. And I know my dad once told me, um, he thought about his mum every day, and it still hurt as much as it had done the day it happened.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Really tough.
And actually, like in this kind of world of going through things quickly and being fixed and cured, and we find this solution, that actually mental health, emotions, grief, all of these things don't really fit nice and neatly into a box like that, do they? Nor do our sort of characteristics, our personalities, our identities as like who we are. We often sort of don't. And you talked about being authentic and like showing up as yourself and really loving when people are showing up sort of genuinely, you know, when they're starting to shine a bit more and things like that. And I'm really curious about kind of if you've seen a difference in you post grief, or if you've seen any glimmers of yourself. You talked about the purple hair, but I'm just curious about like if there's been changes to who you are and how you're being over the years. Because I sort of think about myself when I'm like a teenager and I think, yeah, I'm still the same person, but then in other ways I'm not.
I mean, I describe myself as pre-grief and post-grief. I
Yeah,
am very different. I'm a very different person. I was always ultra extroverted, very, I liked to go out, I liked to do things, I was always the life and soul of the party, and a very big personality. Now, I'm not saying I'm not still a big personality. I am, but it changed something in me. Especially then with COVID happening as well. It made me much more introverted. But I think I always was introverted. I think I was an extroverted introvert, if I'm honest.
yeah.
I think that what happened was I stopped sweating the small stuff, and I realized that I was okay because of who I was, and I didn't have to play a role. And I think
Right.
that pre-grief, I was very much playing the role that everybody wanted me to play. That's
Okay.
and then
Ah,
I come out of it.
yeah, because on the surface, without digging deeper into that, it could seem like you were really extrovert and joyful and cheerful before, and then you sort of withdrawn and quieter. But it sounds more like you were kind of showing up as you thought people thought wanted you to show up, like the shoulds sort of thing.
That's exactly what it is. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is. And do you know what? I'm more at peace now as I am today than I ever was back then. And it's
yeah,
just because I've given myself permission to be who I am.
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that sometimes that show up genuinely as yourself might mean for some people to be louder or to be like share what's on their mind and be, you know, really express themselves kind of externally. But then when you're like really lean into who you genuinely are, it's kind of I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to show up in a certain way to demonstrate that I'm being authentic. I'm just being me. And I don't need, it's that quiet confidence.
That's it. It's just that I think that that's something that I've learned. And I also think that going through my counselling journey the way that I have, the hours of therapy I've gone through myself, I think that that's really sort of helped me to understand that that's actually what happened, is that I just accepted. I'm not saying I fully accept myself because, there's always
Yeah,
parts that, and I still go out and sometimes I feel the need to mask. But what's changed is that I understand in those moments when I'm feeling the need to do that, that it drains my battery quicker, and that there's maybe a reason why I feel like that. So I suppose I choose my battles wisely.
yeah, yeah. And it makes me really think that you're more self-aware. like really kind of aware of the times that maybe part of me, because in counselling and therapy there's a lot about different parts, and like certain parts that show up at different times, and certain like characteristics that come from, and values that come from one place or another. But that self-awareness is really important, isn't it? And somebody might be aware of themselves on a certain level, but then and feel like that they know themselves, and then suddenly like their entire life changes, because like grief can have that impact, can't it, where everything changes. And like I'm gonna link back to what you said about like first having children. Everything changes when you first become a mum. I'm not a mum, but I sort of like recognize that everything changes there, so that those changes of your identity,
Absolutely.
with that, my kind of my understanding of that, the way I think about that, is that whenever we change into a new identity, there's a loss that goes with it, the loss of the person that we were before, or the loss of the how we needed to be or how we chose to be.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And there's so many different types of loss, like divorce, loss of childhood, all of these things. Again, I don't think that people realize that they can grieve for so many different things. And you're right, the experiences that we have throughout life, they change part of who we are, and it might be a small change, it might be a big change. For me, that was the biggest change, I think, because suddenly, I suppose it's suddenly realizing that these people, the two of the biggest people in my life were suddenly gone. And I'm like, I've spent so much time worrying about what other people think, what other people say. And even if they're not saying it, it's my perception of it.
Yeah.
And that's what changed for me. I didn't understand it until I went through therapy myself. And
Yeah.
I find myself questioning that much less now than I ever have before.
Yeah. And when it comes to sort of somebody accessing therapy or choosing whether to kind of seek support, and I use the words therapy and counselling interchangeable quite a lot, because there are nuances with it, aren't they? And there's different training, and there's different approaches. But actually, like we said at the start, a lot of it's about the relationship, and about if you can click with the person that you're working with. So in terms of people coming to you as a counsellor, like the sort of things that you provide, how would you maybe, like, what would that experience maybe be like for someone, if somebody was listening and thinking, oh, actually I quite like the sound of Amanda, she gets me, she'd maybe get me, like what's the process for them?
So, I mean, the first step would be, to give me a call. I offer free 15 minutes. And really, that's just to see if you like me, if you think you could work with me, because, we're all different people, and we all click with different people, and that's fine. The fact is, you need to be able to find some connection with your therapist for it to work. As we said, going through trust. Then, I offer online sessions throughout the UK. My office, if you're watching, you can see me, I'm sat in now, that's in my back garden. I call it my garden sanctuary. And it's, you know, the first few sessions, they're just really about getting to know each other. Figuring out what are your goals, what are your expectations of therapy, and what are you aiming to get. I don't give advice. That's not what it's about. I'm not going to fix you. I don't think that I need to fix you. The point is that I think that you've got everything inside of you that you need. You know, I'm just here to listen, and I might throw the odd thing in every now and then just to make you think about what you're saying, because we spend so much time talking but not actually registering what we're saying about ourselves.
Mm.
Some of the self-talk can be so negative without us even noticing. So, I'd say the first few sessions are just about us getting to know each other and, you know, see if we get on, see if you feel comfortable to talk. And I would never push anybody to talk about anything that they don't want to discuss. You bring what you want to bring. And as I said, I'll walk beside you and listen. And I see it through your eyes. It's your perspective. Your reality is yours. So yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. It sounds like you just being able to connect with you might just make that difference sort of thing. And like the way that you described, like you're not going to you're not there to fix people, because people don't need fixing, because actually it's just maybe needing to have a little bit of guidance and a little bit of somebody to witness their sort of journey and to understand where they're coming from and what's going on for them, and actually start to see things in a new way, in a new light. And you talked about this self-talk, and it's so easy, isn't it, to not recognize the self-talk or hear that self-talk and just really believe it. And I always talk about like that sense of acceptance and change. So in that realm of acceptance, it is like really like listening to that self-talk and really being present for that self-talk, and yeah, recognizing that it makes sense to have those thoughts given the experience, and then like thinking, well, actually those thoughts don't need to be right up in front of you, and you don't need to like maybe force them away. We could just sit and be present with them and see like clouds sort of floating away. And it sounds like that's really similar in like your way of thinking as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, one of the most common things that people sort of talk about with me is I should be doing this or I should do this. And the only thing I would say to that is, should you? You know what I mean? Who says? Who says you
Yeah.
should? What makes you think you should be doing that? And so much of what we think comes from external places, filtering in without us even realizing. I mean, I would say I had one of the worst negative self talk, what's it called? Inner
Is
voice.
the inner critic sort
Inner
of thing.
critic,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
I had one of the worst inner critics. And my inner critic was so much a part of me that I couldn't even hear it. It was like white noise. And it was just like somebody constantly dripping poison in my ear. You know what I mean? And it was only when I started going through therapy that I began to recognise that actually nobody was saying anything as bad to me as I was saying to myself. And that was the pivotal moment, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd imagine that I mean, people would say those things over and over again, wouldn't they? It's like, talk more kindly to yourself. And it's only when you recognize it yourself and allow yourself to maybe see it separate from you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I say a lot, I say it to my husband as well, but I'll say, well, what would you tell your friend to do? You know what I mean? When somebody is, saying things to themselves, and I'll say, well, what would you tell your friend to do? 9 times out of 10, we completely change the way that we would speak to someone else
Yeah,
compared to how we would speak to ourselves.
yeah, yeah. It's so true, isn't it? And actually, like sometimes we'd know that.
Yeah.
We'd know that. We know that we're speaking negatively to ourselves, but then it's like, well, that's just the way I am, sort of thing. So it does take somebody else sometimes just to have a different perspective, like to be able to see things with a new frame and a new lens.
Yeah.
I think that's what I find really helpful about like support like this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, because we can get so stuck, and I've told you that a couple of times I got so stuck inside my own head about things that that's all I could see. And that's a really difficult place to be.
Yeah, yeah. And as you were saying that, it's made me think about brain fog. And I'm in this, this sort of mid 40s um time where like brain fog happens a lot. And like I've been doing a lot with slime recently, just cause. And that, this representing the brain and the scrambled spaghetti brain. And actually sometimes people can associate that with maybe a hormonal thing or a physical health thing, but actually emotionally our brains can feel like really foggy. It can feel like really, like you can feel like I I'm just frozen and numb and I can't think straight, or I maybe can't kind of articulate and find the words to explain how I'm feeling. So I just need to do nothing, or I might say nothing, or I might like overshare, or whatever it is that goes on. But it's just recognizing that actually these, as you said with your experience, these things are like the brain's way of protecting ourselves, our subconscious mind's way of protecting us, and to providing a bit of a relief that thinking clearly might not be helpful in that time
Yeah,
sometimes.
definitely. I mean, like, if somebody will say, if you say, how are you today? Oh, I feel rubbish. You know what I mean? But rubbish isn't a feeling, is it? You know what I mean?
No, no.
Until it's really helpful to be able to acknowledge, right, what does rubbish mean to me? Okay, one day you might feel sad, one day you might feel angry, and being able to being able to accept those emotions is a big step, I think.
Yeah, it's knowing the differences, isn't it, as well, and communicating the differences, because there's like those differences between being irritated and being angry or anxious, and like genuinely like really scared. And yeah, that kind of difference of owning the feeling compared to like feeling it.
Yeah, and also being able to understand that you can actually feel more than one thing at the same time. So you can
Yeah,
feel, you know, angry and anxious at the same time. You can feel happy and sad at the same time.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You can feel multiple things.
yeah.
And so, of course, it's confusing.
That's true, and I think that's what like brings about like takes away that inner peace if you've got the internal conflict of, and maybe fits in with that dual model of bouncing between one emotion and another. But the reality is that you can feel sad and grateful at the same time, or you can feel like, or you can laugh at something and feel sad about it, and laugh at a memory and then miss the person. And it's messy, and it's meant to be messy because we're human. If it
Exactly.
wasn't messy, we'd just all be robots, and like who knows what life would be like then. But I'm totally with you on that dual emotions, and like really wanting to do something but not having the drive to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's probably going back to grief for a second. I think that's probably why it's can be so overwhelming because you're feeling so many different things at once, and we don't understand it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Just this, and that's why it becomes overwhelming. Or in periods of great stress, that's why it can feel overwhelming.
yeah, yeah, completely. So in those moments of overwhelm,
Yeah.
this takes me on to question about self-care and thinking about like, what you might do to manage your emotions, to regulate your emotions, and to just look after yourself. Do you have particular things that you go to?
So I've been notoriously bad at self care throughout my life, and it's only
Yeah.
becoming a counsellor that I have realised just how important it is. So I do make a real effort with self care, and I do it in quite a creative way, I suppose. So I crochet. I
Yeah.
taught myself to crochet. I love to build Lego. I quite like crystals. That's my new thing. I'm quite into crystals. And I love to read.
Yeah.
So, sometimes if my head feels really busy, then reading a good book, kind of putting someone else's words into my head for a while can be really helpful. Or just focusing on, crocheting a bear or something. It just really helps me to get out of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it feels a bit like a lot of people see self-care as just like relaxing sort of thing and doing nothing. And I think that it's leaning less away, leaning away from it's just bubble baths and spa. But I think often self-care is more like, let's have a day where I'm not really doing anything. But then sometimes those days might not feel relaxing. I'm a bit more like I'm in flow when I'm doing and when I'm being creative, when I'm out in nature, when I'm doing those things. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing with the Lego, with the reading, with the crochet, that it's been actively resting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no good at being, not doing anything. I'm not good with it at all. In fact, if anything, that makes my mind go into overdrive when I'm not busy. I can't even watch telly without doing something with my hands. I have to be doing something. And that's just how I process things. And so, even though because I listen to audiobooks, that was something that actually changed. Going back to a question from earlier, I actually stopped having the ability to read books.
Yeah.
So I can read physically, but I just can't concentrate on a page. So I listen to audiobooks. Now, when I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm either cleaning because I get a sense of satisfaction from it, or, doing one of my activities, colouring, diamond painting, something creative.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, but yeah, lazing about, no, not really.
It's doing those things that are like just recognizing different types of rests and your what works for you. So that
Yeah,
sounds good.
I always say it kind of feeds my soul. It's just something that it's like, it like puts a bit of balm on me. It helps me feel
Mm,
calm, and it just, it grounds me, I suppose is the word. The only other thing I would say that I do, I'm really lucky. I think over the past few years, I've realised the people that recharge my batteries. And so when I do feel like being sociable, or when I do feel like I need to talk to people that I trust about things that are difficult or whatever, I'll be around those people because I know that they are there to support me no matter what.
yeah. It's having people around that for certain seasons really, isn't it? That like might lift you and raise you and then times that you might be doing the same for them and I find the same. There's times if I'm feeling really down and then other people will lift me up and times when other people are down then I may be the one that's stepping in to support.
Exactly.
So yeah. And you said about kind of that lifting up and like almost yeah that's just real nice quality and like it feels like those nurturing things of self-care and filling your cup and just really enjoying that time when you're maybe not working and you're sort of spending time with other people is part of that as well and yeah that feels really important.
It is really important. I think another thing that's been really important for me is being able to acknowledge when I'm starting to reach my brain's capacity. I think really
Okay.
being able to notice when my cup is filling up and being quite tough on myself to take a step back and go, okay, you need to, because I know what happens if I cross that line and won't feel good. So it's having those boundaries in place where I'm like, right, this is where I am. I need to take a step back. But it's a really difficult thing to do, especially when you've got a family, especially when you're working, when you're busy. But, you know, when I was younger, I remember just, as I said, just keeping going. But what you come to realise, or what I've come to realise, is that I can't help anyone else unless I am looking after myself. So
Yeah,
that's kind of my number one boundary now. I've got to carve time for myself.
yeah. Yeah, it's that, age-old thing of putting your own oxygen mask
Yeah,
on before somebody else's, and you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's so common, isn't it, for somebody that's working in well-being or in health or mental health to say that to other people and then about it ourselves. That actually it's so easy just to go, oh well, I could just carry on, sort of
yeah,
thing. So just I think having these conversations is just a flag to that. Like just a flag to actually everybody's human. Just because you've been trained in counselling or you've got so many years of experience doesn't mean that something's gonna like that you don't need to use those things, that you don't need to practice that self care and like take a break when you need to. And like in the interest of this podcast, it's about taking time to pause, and it's like that stepping into a new pace feels so relevant for grief, I've got to say. But yeah, and I'm just wanting to sort of find out from you, maybe we might have covered some of these things anyway, it might just be more of a summary, but how would you consider like those four elements of pace, which pause, act, create, empower? How would you like what resonates about them?
well, I think that without the pause, you can't act, create, or empower. I think
Mm,
that the pause is a really important thing. As I say, you've got to make sure that your own cup is taken care of first. Absolutely. Um, I suppose for me, I've learned to act with confidence and conviction in myself. Create, I love to create anything. Um, as I said, it feeds my soul,
yeah,
and it empower. I have gained incredible empowerment from the people who supported me, and now I am paying that forward to empower. Um, Not even really to empower them, but to help them find their own empowerment.
yeah,
So, I think all really, really important things. And when you bring them together, it gives you the opportunity to um, find out who you are and to live, in an authentic way, I suppose.
yeah. Oh, lovely, lush. And just thinking about that idea of empower and empowering somebody and allowing someone to find their power, that just felt like really lovely to hear because actually empowering somebody is about doing something to somebody rather than having them find their power and like just emerge more confidently and be more authentic. And that sounds, is that what you sort of striving towards? Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
love that.
Yeah. I also think that my clients help to empower me. Do you know what I mean? I think, if anything, I would say that more, the journey that we go on together helps to empower me um, to continue to do what I do.
Yeah. Fantastic. So is there, it feels like we've explored so many things and there'll be so many, all of these topics could be explored much more and given much more time and much more sort of attention. So it does feel like we've covered an awful lot, and so I really appreciate you sharing like personal things as well as professional insights and wisdom. And is there anything that you think that we've not mentioned or not spoken about today that or that you'd like to speak about just now?
No, I don't think. I think we've talked about so much, as you say. I suppose the only thing that I would say is that if there's anybody out there and they need support or anything that, as we've talked about today, has resonated with them, what I would say is find someone you trust and talk to them. That might be your partner, a friend, a work colleague. You don't have to be alone. And, that's the most important thing for me, is for people to know that you're not alone. You don't have
Yeah.
to work this job. We don't have to walk this journey alone.
Yeah, and I don't think you can say that enough times, really, that you can feel really lonely, like you can think and believe that you're not alone with it, but you can feel in your heart alone and stuck and struggling. So actually, the more people are told that they're not alone, the better, and that actually, like, it's okay to feel a bit rubbishy and
It's,
to take however long it takes
exactly.
to get to where you're going and exploring and expressing what you need to express with people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing, I suppose, of the message that I always try and put out there is you are not alone.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Amanda. It feels so good to talk with you, and so thank you everyone for listening as well. And let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. We'll put Amanda's details in the description below, and so she'll be like all her social media and everything like that, so you'll be able to send any messages to Amanda or ask me any questions if there's anything else that covers in this episode of a New Pace podcast, or in any of the other ones. In fact, if you've got any questions that resonate or anything that you want to talk about that feels right, to reach out to us.